All right, and we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wolf. Happy Monday. Happy Monday morning. It's 8:30, well, 8:40 a.m. Started a few minutes late. Thought I had all my stuff ready to go for the stream. I was missing a couple things, so started a few minutes late. But figured we'd start these kind of daily streams here on Wolf and run through some of the stuff going on in the market a little bit and just run through top stories, really. These are going to be short live streams. We're going to be doing a lot more video content, and so we're really just kind of kicking things off. I don't have any specific agendas or specific ideas of how we're going to run this. So figured we'd start with just some like 15 to 30 minute live streams, run through some of the top news that's going on in the market, see where everything's sitting at. I believe Bitcoin is sitting just above $112,000. Ethereum sitting at just above $4,300. And we can run through some of the other ones here in a second, but really we're going to stick more on Bitcoin here because that's really kind of the core of where the brand is gone, I guess. And also the interest amongst the industry is mainly in Bitcoin institutionally. And the way we're moving, it seems like this is the direction, right? So anyways, I wanted to pull up a couple things. So Michael Saylor and Tom Lee, both going on CNBC earlier onto the Squawk Box and talking about where they could see Bitcoin going to. So Michael Saylor here predicting $150,000 by year end. And we also saw this one. I'll play these in a second here. We saw Tom Lee going on right after. This is 3 hours ago. They posted this, by the way. So this is early this morning. And he went on and also predicts a $200,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2025. And so pretty interesting stuff going on here from two of these, probably the biggest Ethereum bull, Tom Lee, and then the biggest Bitcoin bull, which is Michael Saylor. And obviously BM&R from Tom Lee's side is just buying up as much Ethereum as they can. Michael Saylor is buying up as much Bitcoin as they can. They're really taking these treasury strategies to the max and pushing them to the extremes here. And that's what they're talking about. That's why the Squawk Box keeps having them on. They're like, what the hell? They're like, so you guys are going to keep doing this? Like, what does this mean exactly? Like, how can you explain this to the people? It's really interesting. So anyways, let's play a couple. These clips are like less than a minute long. So let's just hear what Michael Saylor has to say. I believe you guys should be able to hear my recording or the video. So let me know if you guys can't hear. But I'm going to play this sound right now.
Check out price.
All right. Unmute. And here we go.
Bitcoin this morning, the cryptocurrency up over 100% this year. Joining us right now is Bitcoin bull Michael Saylor, strategy executive chairman. You know him from MicroStrategy. People are still getting those names, figured out. So we had Tom Lee on the broadcast. I don't know if you saw this earlier today. And he effectively said Bitcoin at $111,000 is headed to $200,000 effectively by Christmas. What do you think of that?
Well, most of the equity analysts that follow our stock have target prices for Bitcoin, and they're all north of 150. Bitcoin represents a digital transformation of the capital markets. And so the more people know about it, the more they get educated on it, the more companies embrace it, the higher it goes. You can't make any more of it.
Right. That may be all. But in terms of just what you're seeing, check out price of Bitcoin this morning, the cryptocurrency.
All right. There you have it. That is from Mr. Michael Saylor. And then we'll bounce over here to Tom Lee and get some of his thoughts on why things Bitcoin get to $200,000.
Equities do really well. As you know, crypto is beta to equity. So I think it's going to.
1 sec. All right, I'm not sure why I wouldn't stop playing there. But yeah, we have Tom Lee here talking about Bitcoin here for once. Usually I see him talking about Ethereum. But there's some of his thoughts. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's just 2 minutes long. But he says one of the reasons Bitcoin stalled this year is because the Fed has been on pause for 9 months. When the Fed begins to resume cuts in Q4, equity should do really well. And crypto is the beta to equity. That's his thought. And so that is basically as easily as you could wrap it, the take of Wall Street, the take of the guys getting in right now. We're obviously at the very end of a 4-year cycle. We are within weeks of potentially the very end. You know what I mean? It's just down only kind of thing from here. For the, but everyone I know who's really smart is, not everyone, but a lot of people, big majority for sure, is thinking there's no way this thing wraps in the next 4 weeks and we're just down only for a year. It doesn't make any sense. I could definitely see that happening. So I'm not really in that camp. I'm more so, let's just wait and see what happens and react from there. It's really been a reactor's market. It's really been a scalping market, it feels like, especially if you're a trader. And yeah, that's probably what I would say is that. So anyways, let's roll through a couple other stories here. So like I said, we're going to stay more Bitcoin focused. There's obviously going to be crypto stories that come up that are interesting, but things that are interesting, like Tether. This is in a newspaper recently. Tether in talks to broaden his bets on a natural Bitcoin or gold. And so the idea here, the story here is what I heard is that Tether is going to be starting to diversify some of their investments into gold and gold mining stocks, I believe it was. And the way they describe it here is natural Bitcoin. And I think this is going to be a conversation that continues to grow over the next few years because it makes sense. The conversation around currencies, around which one's worth more. Why is that currency worth more? What are even the qualities of a currency? And that's when really the conversation around, you really only have a couple choices. There's really just Bitcoin and gold in that scenario, real talk. So, yeah, you've got other options, but no one's really taking them seriously. And so it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation because I think gold's going to perform very well. And if gold is performing very well and people are trying to figure out why, there's only a couple of reasons why anyone's buying gold. And that opens up the conversations around where you're storing your assets as wealth long term. And I think that's where Bitcoin is really, really going to make some headway here. Along the way, I think there's going to be some pretty bad corrections. I've seen the view that because, we've made it, institutions are here, that we're done with corrections and stuff, there's going to be some pretty big corrections. I think what I've seen is that they're like, we're not going to see these 70% corrections. And I'm like, dude, I think we definitely could. What do you mean? Like, maybe we don't see it like timed the way it was before, where it's like, hey, every date's at this moment, typically you can, rely on this for your cycle data and, blah, blah, blah. But to rule out, that there's going to be massive corrections along the way, that there's definitely not some co-opting going on here and some government people, whoever, throwing in some wrenches in everyone's plans. That is definitely what's going on and will continue to be what's going on. And so I'm just going to keep stacking for me. I'm like, look, if they're bothering to try and get you out of your Bitcoin, just continue to buy more, keep your job, keep rolling with it, and continue to DCA. I think that's probably the best strategy here. Otherwise, you're probably just going to get drowned down all the noise. Anyways, speaking of noise, Michael Saylor does not care. Like I said earlier, this is a couple days ago, maybe yesterday, September 8th. Nope, that was today. Michael Saylor, strategy, buying another almost 2,000 Bitcoin for $200 million, 217 to be exact. And Michael Saylor obviously was poking fun a little bit at the S&P. Everyone was talking about it. They're like, MicroStrategy is going to be in the S&P 500. They have to be. Their Bitcoin holdings and their balance sheet is going to be counted toward their earnings. Therefore, they're very, very profitable. They're great business. This makes sense. Let's add them in. Everyone wants to trade MicroStrategy, right? No. Wall Street says, no. You can't just cut the line and have your balance sheet just equate your earnings all of a sudden and skip the line. You're going to be the number one company on Wall Street. No, we will not let this happen. This is not a good, no, we need to figure out exactly what to do here. We have to figure out how we're going to win. That's what I think they're thinking. So what I believe, and I'm actually not mad, is that they pushed off the MicroStrategy. They let in Robinhood, which obviously Robinhood is tokenizing all assets. They're going to be tokenizing on their platform. And so everyone can trade 24/7. Doesn't matter what you're trading. If it's Tesla stock, it's tokenized now. Now you can trade tokenized Tesla stock, crypto, whatever. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, but I do know that this is the direction we're headed, that stablecoins are the medium that the government has chosen to replace, I think, at least the current financial system, because it sucks. Stablecoins are a lot better. I think we'll probably be using stablecoins in a very real way. I think Bitcoin will still be that store of value. That's kind of my general thoughts toward it. But yeah, MicroStrategy continue to buy. They don't really care. And speaking of the Trump family, we've got Eric Trump here. And Eric Trump, the whole family, of course, is probably involved in this in some capacity. But Eric and Donald Trump Jr. are really the two from the Trump family really taking a hold of American Bitcoin. And anyways, I have a couple other stories on him in a second. But one thing that I thought was interesting was that Eric Trump is he's pretty active in the Bitcoin world, actually, and the crypto world overall. And it seems like he's got some genuine understanding of the industry, because when he speaks about it, I'm like, I think he does get why the industry's here. It's here because the systems right now suck, and there's too much unnecessary stuff going on, and there's way too many middlemen getting paid. Crypto solves all those problems, and it makes it easier to pay people across the board. And I think he genuinely gets that as a businessman. So anyways, I'm actually relatively bullish on Eric. I don't know if that's not the right way to put it. I'm bullish on Eric's desire to build in the industry and probably do well. I'm not fully sure if that means investors will do well. I think he will continue to build big companies. I don't know what that means for shareholders in what all that means. So anyways, we'll come back to ABTC in a second. Because there was another stat I think I'd seen, but ABTC just launched and went live on the NASDAQ 2 or 3 days ago. And so they're very new American Bitcoin. They're the combination of Hut 8, which is another Bitcoin miner, and Eric Trump and Donald Trump's company. They kind of brought them together. Hut 8 is going to, they donated essentially all of their hardware and ASICs and said, we will take care of the mining. You provide some other things like, connections and my other stuff. We'll handle this side, and we'll bring this partnership together. We'll call it American Bitcoin. And so that's what they did. They kind of capitalized on all the American patriotism and all the stuff that was going on. They just flipped the smarter web company, SWC, to become now the 25th largest Bitcoin treasury company in the world. And so, for some people, they're really getting nervous here. There's too many treasury companies. This is going to end bad. They're all over leverage. They're all buying it at the top. This is going to cook us. That's what a lot of people are saying. I think there's a very high likelihood that they're spot on with that. I think there's a very high chance the treasury companies are what lead us straight down. But if they don't, and MicroStrategy and all these companies following are able to outrun the money they have to pay off in order to continue stacking Bitcoin, then this will be the most, the highest wealth creating bull run of all time, because these companies will make so much money. It's ridiculous. And the only people bothering to invest are probably the people in our industry. Like, who is buying, a company that started stacking Litecoin or something? Like, obviously a crypto person, or Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin person. So that's kind of my thought with it. Anyways, let's move on. So Bitcoin, fascinating story here from Bitcoin. One of our regular speakers, Grant and Gary Cardone, the two twins, regulars in our spaces. But Grant Cardone coming on and selling his Miami mansion for 400 Bitcoin. Settle within 72 hours. So obviously there's still paperwork that has to go through, but done around 72 hours. That's crazy. It usually takes weeks to months. That's the power of Bitcoin, And so, like I said, there's still the traditional rails you have to go through. But in terms of the payment, there's a lot of things that get fixed with this that I really like. And there are a lot more in your hands. So 5 years ago, 400 Bitcoin would have been about 1.5 million. That stash is now worth 43, right? So if you had held real estate and you're holding it in dollars, that's tough. But if you're holding it in Bitcoin, I think the mix of real estate and Bitcoin is pretty fascinating. Grant was on a space yesterday, and they were really getting into the weeds there around how Bitcoin and real estate are going to work together, the various portfolios, how they're going to generate cash flow, whatever products they offer to get people exposure to both. That was kind of what they were thinking too. Like, is this Bitcoin fund that he created? And this isn't part of it, but Grant Cardone has a fund that, essentially brings his investors together, provides them with a small bit of Bitcoin exposure. In return, they give him money. He invests into real estate, which is his thing. And he says, hey, by the way, a portion of this, we're going to invest into Bitcoin exposure so you guys can get access to that without being too high risk. So I think Grant Cardone is probably it's a pretty good example of how you can enter in from the traditional finance side, and do it pretty well. He's got a good advantage. His twin brother, Gary, is very, very involved in the Bitcoin space. And that's a very, obviously, good thing, because he's going to stop him from doing very tone-deaf, stupid things. And he's probably going to review something and be like, hey, that's not a good PR statement. We do not want that to get out. That's not exactly how you want to word that. That's not the right, you know what I mean? And so it's pretty interesting. I think Grant could be a pretty big player here in the Bitcoin world pretty soon. Got about 6 minutes left or so here in the stream. So I want to run through a couple last stories here. Let me know if I think you guys can still see my screen. But we have, this is from CoinDesk and River. But companies are purchasing almost 2,000 Bitcoin a day, 1,755 Bitcoin a day. They're buying every single day. I mean, this is nuts, dude. I mean, this is wild. I mean, look at this, dude. This is all via River. So very cool stuff to see River making an impact on the industry like this. But yeah, I thought that was worth showing up and showing to you guys. Another stat that was interesting. It's crazy numbers, but Bitcoin treasuries now holding 840,000 Bitcoin. Good Lord. So I see these comments, right? Andrew 40,000 locked in treasuries. It's not trading. These are tough. For all the public ones, I believe we have a pretty decent understanding of where it is and if they're held or locked, or what their strategy is exactly. The private ones, I don't know, because there's also an equal amount. I don't know exactly how many, but there's a ton of Bitcoin held by private companies. And obviously, you don't have to disclose everything if you're private in the same way that you have to if you're public. And so I think that's pretty fascinating. So anyways, that is the main stories here. I'm going to bounce to this tab here and wrap here in a moment. But we wanted to just jump on and do a bit of a stream and run through some of the top stories real quick in the morning. Do this probably every day. We're going to give it a run. I have no idea. And just keep you guys up to date on what's going on. So be sure to check us out on X. If you're watching from YouTube, this is where our main platform is. And so we're, Wolf Financial is the parents, mama, of everybody here. First ever Spaces host in the world 4 or 5 years ago when they started. We have these schedules where we have Spaces all day long. We're about to start ours. This is the Wolf Financial schedule if you're into stocks. And if you're into the crypto side of things, or Bitcoin side of things, we have Wolf Bitcoin, which I'm the host for. And so we're about to go live here in about 4 minutes with our shows here. And you can see on our schedule that we post for Wolf _Bitcoin _. Now we've got the streams here in the mornings. We've got the Market Talk Spaces shows where we have all the traders come on and we talk about the market, and we run into other shows. We got all sorts of shows, Bitcoin shows, Market Talk shows, trading shows, got it all. So we'll see you there on X. It's if you're on YouTube, it's down below in the description if you guys want to find us there. And we'll be live. We're basically live every single day, all day. Especially in the next few weeks, we're going to be moving over a lot of our crypto content to Wolf Crypto. And so Wolf Bitcoin will be getting a little bit more Bitcoin content, some trading content, stuff like that as well. And so big things coming. We'll catch you guys all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your Monday if we don't see you. And we'll catch you guys all in the next space here starting in about 4 minutes over on Wolf Bitcoin. Take care, everybody.